I was living my life blissfully ignoring any warning signs, if there even were any, and then everything changed in a single moment. I had just returned from a 2-day business conference in Texas, exhausted but content. As I walked into my home expecting a warm welcome from my wife and kids, I was instead met with a bizarre scene. My wife, Casey, and our children were gathered around the kitchen table, laughter filling the air like they'd just heard the funniest joke of their lives. "What's so funny?" I asked, setting my bag down. The moment those words left my mouth, the laughter stopped. The room went silent. Casey's expression shifted, her face unreadable. "Billy, why don't you sit down?" she said, nodding toward an empty chair. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Unsuspecting, I sat. She placed a thick stack of papers in front of me, waving them slightly before slapping them onto the table. "Read these," she said, her tone cool and practiced, like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. I frowned and picked up the first page. "Divorce papers." "I'm not asking for much," she continued. "Just the house." And as if that wasn't shocking enough, she slid another set of documents toward me. "Oh, and these are adoption papers. I want Jeff to adopt the kids." My breath caught in my throat. "Jeff?" Casey sighed, exasperated. "Yes, Billy, Jeff. The man who's been making me scream while you've been working your ass off every day." I couldn't process what I was hearing. 12 years of marriage, 3 children, a life we built from the ground up, discarded. In an instant, my son Devin smirked at me. My daughter Joy didn't even look up from her iPod. Only my youngest Patrick spoke up. "Dad, Jeff has a huge house and we all like it," he said cheerfully, as if that somehow made this nightmare more acceptable. I stared at my so-called family, my mind racing for an explanation. Maybe Casey was drunk. Maybe this was some twisted prank. But no, she was sober, completely in control. When I didn't respond fast enough, she shrugged, gathered the papers, and tossed them onto the counter. Then she laid out a check in front of me. "Here's your half of the bank account. Take it and go." The kids jumped up at her command, grabbing my bags before I could react. "Casey, this is my family home. My parents let me live here long, before we even got married. Your name isn't on any documents. You're not taking my house." Her expression barely flickered. "Fine, we'll go." She turned to the kids. "Pack up. We're going home to Jeff." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "Who the hell is Jeff?" Casey rolled her eyes. "I already told you, he's the guy who's been screwing me while you were working." She said it so casually, like she was talking about the weather. My stomach churned. I looked at my children, hoping for some sign of hesitation, some glimmer of love. None came. "Dad," Joy finally said, "Jeff can give us a better life. Mom loves him. And so do we." Her brothers nodded in agreement. I felt something inside me snap. The pain, the rage, it was unbearable. But instead of shouting, I stepped aside and motioned toward the door. "Then go." They grabbed their bags and filed out. As Casey reached for the car door, I barked, "Don't touch that car. I paid for it, and it's in my name." She didn't argue. Instead, she and the kids smirked at me one last time before flipping me off in unison. The door slammed behind me, and I stood in the empty house, my hands shaking. 12 years, gone in the blink of an eye, betrayed by the people I loved most. So I did what any man would do in my situation. I drank heavily. The next morning, with a splitting headache and a bitter taste in my mouth, I knew what had to be done. I found a lawyer. "Billy," he said after reviewing the papers, "I suggest you sign this before she changes her mind. She's not even asking for child support." A hollow laugh escaped my throat. She didn't even want my money. Jeff had more than enough, so I signed. In a matter of months, the divorce was finalized. My former family never looked back. Neither did I. I threw myself into my work, went back to school, earned a master's degree, then a doctorate. In time, I became Dr. William Capps, a highly sought-after accountant catering to affluent clients. My life, once in ruins, was rebuilt, piece by piece, not for them, for me. And somewhere along the way, I met Patty. A new chapter began. She was everything I'd been looking for: hardworking, supportive, sharing my interests, and taking pride in maintaining our home. By the end of our 4th year together, my firm had grown to the point of expansion. I purchased a 5-story office building. Patty and I loved it so much we even held our wedding on the 4th floor. A few months later, we discovered Patty was pregnant. Life was on the upswing. Then, Casey resurfaced. After 7 years of silence, she served me with legal papers demanding $3,000 a month in child support and $432,000 for missed opportunities, all while she'd been living lavishly with Jeff. But Jeff was gone, vanished, and Casey was bankrupt. What followed was a storm of legal battles, manipulations, and betrayals. But through it all, Patty and I stood strong. We built a beautiful life, and when Casey's schemes finally collapsed, when her own lies destroyed her life, I felt no satisfaction. Just peace, because some things just aren't worth fighting for.